Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if Castile and Aragon never united. The unification of Aragon and Castile happened in 1469 thanks to the marriage of Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon. Castile had a few problems and there was an important war happening, called the War of Castilian Succession from 1475 to 1479. In that war, Portugal and France intervened against Castile and also Aragon, who was already in an alliance with Castile. After winning that war, Queen Isabella was fully in control of her realm. In that same year, upon the death of his father, Ferdinand became the king of Aragon. Thus, the both kingdoms were controlled by a powerful royal couple. Historically, Aragon focused its expansion in the Mediterranean and especially in Italy, while Castile wanted to conclude the Reconquista and did so by annexing Granada, which was the last Islamic bastion in Iberia. From there on, things went further up for both kingdoms, and the two kingdoms eventually became Spain. Sure, many local structures were kept, but even after the unification, many things they didn't change, and it was just over the time that Castile became more important, especially linguistically, and also politically speaking. Castile was in a way the head of that union, and nowadays we even consider sometimes Castile to be Spain. And Aragon was just a bit forgotten, and that's why also nowadays Catalan people are fighting for their independence. But that aside, what if all of that changed? What if Aragon and Castile never united? For that to happen, we need the French and the Portuguese to win the succession war, the Castilian succession. As a result, the wife of the Portuguese king Alfonso V, Joana la Bertrandreja, would become the Queen of Castile, and Aragon would most likely also have to make concessions. The Canary Islands could or could not end up becoming Portuguese, but I think that after winning the crown of Castile, it would be a very bad move to then just take the Canary Islands. The Portuguese in here, they would conclude the same thing that they concluded in OTL, where everything in the Atlantic South would then be part of the Portuguese hegemony or just become Portuguese. But even then, I still think that the Portuguese would get some rights to put their ships in the port in the Canary Islands. And also temporarily speaking, the French and the Portuguese could have an alliance and very good diplomatic relationships, while Castile would have some unrests. But then again, having a seemingly foreign monarch wasn't that rare, and in OTL many dynasties, royal houses and whatnot, they had not so distinct relations with many other royal houses, and much of the royalty was intermarried between each other, so I think it wouldn't pose a problem. The only thing that we could see is that the Castilian nobles and the nobility in there may calm down after some time, and they would also win certain more rights, leading to a path of a less absolutist monarchy. Aragon would be in a very bad spot, and it would lose a lot of influence in Italy over the time, while France could then start to gain more control and have fearsome wars in Italy. England may or may not jump in the occasional war against the French, but I don't think that the English would do much of a damage, at least in mainland Europe. Don't think that the French, they could just steamroll all over Italy. Oh no. The Italian city-states, they were very innovative, they could easily adapt, they had very good defensive strategies, so I think that the French, they would pull out many difficult and also very harsh battles, but they could still come on top of it after many decades or even a few centuries. Aragon would have the Pyrenees as a defense, but with Castile on the Portuguese side and then the French on the other side, geographically speaking, well, Aragon would then end up being split. The Italian possessions, they would go to France definitely, while most of Aragon proper, well, in Iberia, would be absorbed somehow by Portugal and Castile, but then again some parts they would stay independent, where a Portuguese prince or someone of the Portuguese dynasty would become a ruler in there, or maybe the heir to the throne would become the Prince of Aragon, for instance. The same happens nowadays in the UK with the Prince of Wales. Once Aragon is gone, we may see a very important shift where these three Iberian kingdoms could fight often against the French and still get an alliance with the English. Without the unification of Aragon and Castile, foreign policies would certainly change. It is very likely that Africa, India and Asian possessions would become more important, while the official discovery may be postponed or published by the English. I'm speaking of the discovery of the Americas. England would have an easier time expanding in the Americas, and they could even coordinate efforts of colonization and also of trade with the Iberian kingdoms. France, if it would decide to expand overseas, would have a very difficult time to do so. And I actually believe that the French would not really succeed in having a good colony as they did in OTL. France would also be effectively blocked from all sides, with Venice and the Papal States in the Italian peninsula, the Portuguese controlled Aragon, England and the Holy Roman Empire. The OTL Iberian Union wouldn't happen because with all the butterflies in this alternate timeline, King Sebastian of Portugal wouldn't die during the battle, which he fought in Morocco. Instead, much of Morocco and northern Africa could fall into the hands of this powerful union between Portugal, Castile and Aragon, but mainly Portugal. This dynastic union could become something similar to the UK in OTL. Portugal would call the shots, but Spanish or Portuñol would be mainly spoken, and Aragon or Catalans would still be unhappy and have occasional revolts in their own kingdom or princedom. Many possessions outside of Iberia would be part of the Portuguese crown, but effectively be managed by Portugal again, because Lisbon would become the main port for import and export, and also for sending out the officials per ship. Brazil and much of the Caribbean could become part of the Portuguese as well. However, all the OTL possessions of Spain, I have my doubts whether the Portuguese would control it or not. The Incans, I think, would have the best chance of surviving, while the Aztecs and Mayans, they could face a different situation than in OTL, where the English, they may come, for instance, or where the Portuguese would just take a tiny part like Yucatan, or where they would have a city-state in nowadays Veracruz, for instance. The relations and colonies in there would just serve for gold extractions and resource extractions, similar as with Africa in our timeline, and we would see still many slaves coming from Africa who would then go and work on plantations in Brazil and also in the Caribbean, and occasional slaves who would then also be sent maybe in the mines of Mexico or some possessions in other parts of what we call nowadays Latin America. During the spread of Protestantism, England could alienate itself a bit for some time from the Catholic Iberians, but realpolitik would kick in, and with the French-Ottoman alliance, which would still happen in OTL, and the Portuguese possessions in northern Africa, huge wars would break out between these powers, leading to the loss of North Africa to the Ottomans and some parts of Iberia to the French. There may also be a chance for the French to put in a puppet monarch in Aragon, depending on how decisively they would win against the Iberian kingdoms. This war could also mean that Portugal and Castile would refrain from the European policies in general. They may get a tighter union for some time and would focus just on their colonies and overseas expansion together with England. Fast forward, we would get a different Spain, with a Portuguese west and a Castilian east. Aragon would be heavily francophonized, to such an extent that the people would also start to reject French influence in their lands. With an overpowered France, allied with an Ottoman Empire, they would eventually see a decline, yes, but the French would still have many lands of Italy, and the Ottomans, they would still be very present in northern Africa and even parts of the Mediterranean. And this would lead to a very interesting evolution. Aragon may actually accept the assistance of Portugal, Castile, and even England, with the promise that their independence would be accepted. Austria and the Habsburg would still come out as powerful dynasty within the HRE, and they too would face threats from France and the Ottomans, with a potential support of the papacy as well, being afraid of the gigantic Muslim Ottoman Empire and France knocking on the door of the Papal States. Europe, the Middle East and Northern Africa could see enormous wars between the pro-French Ottoman faction and the pro-Catholic alliance with English support. If the French and Ottomans win, the colonies would go their own way and Europe would see a golden age of France, whereas in the Middle East we would see a golden age of the Ottomans. But if the other alliance wins, France would become the black sheep of Europe and there would be continuous wars against the Ottomans. And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.